It's time for Windows Weekly. Paul Thurrott and Mary Jo Foley are here, the last live show of 2021. We will take a look back at Microsoft's year and then a look ahead at what to expect in 2022. It's going to be a great show. Yes, the back of the book is back. It's all coming up next on Windows Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott and Mary Jo Foley. Episode 756, recorded Wednesday, December 22nd, 2021. The Amish Comic. Windows Weekly is brought to you by UserWay.org. UserWay ensures your website is accessible, ADA compliant, and helps your business avoid accessibility-related lawsuits. The perfect way to showcase your brand's commitment to millions of people with disabilities. It's not only the right thing to do, it's also the law. Go to userway.org/twit for 30% off UserWay's AI-powered accessibility solution. And by AT&T ActiveArmor. Cooking between meetings, helping with homework, walking the dog. Work from home is distracting already. And when you finally get down to work and focus, the phone rings and it's a fraud call. Don't let fraud calls disrupt your flow. AT&T makes your security a top priority, helping block fraud calls with AT&T ActiveArmor. It's not complicated. AT&T ActiveArmor, 24/7 proactive network security, fraud call blocking, and spam notifications to help stop threats at no extra charge. Compatible device and service required. Visit att.com/ActiveArmor for details. It's time for Windows Weekly. Hey, the last show of 2021. But good news, 2022 is just around the corner.
Careful which way you turn your fingers. I just watched that Winston Churchill.
Oh yeah, that's a great movie, The Darkest Hour. What a great movie that is. I love that. Hello, Paul Thurrott, Thurrott.com. Good to see you.
Laporte.
Happy holidays.
Laporte.com.
Actually, that works. That works. Also, Mary Jo Foley on her mom's porch.
So great.
All about Microsoft.com. The beauty of this is she can work anywhere. That's nice.
Is that a Taylor Swift song, isn't it? Your mom's porch?
On your mom. Does that mean
I'm wearing my cardigan? Does that
I know. He looks very festive. So you're gonna spend the holidays at mom's. That's nice.
Yeah, at my mom's and then down to my sister's in Rhode Island. I'm just going to be like avoiding the Omicron left and right as I move along.
if you can, at least you're not in Manhattan, where everything's
kudos on the lower third. By the way, nicely done.
Mom's house, nice.
She said she wanted it to indicate her new location.
Yes.
CES, it looks like, is going to be kind of scam.
That shouldn't even happen. How is that?
I know. I can't believe they were going to have it anyway. But with everyone pulling out the way they are, how on earth would you go forward with this thing?
I don't know.
CNET's not going. The Verge isn't going.
Verge isn't going.
Gizmodo's not going.
PC Mag, nope.
Microsoft not going. Amazon not going. Nobody's going.
I mean, as of today, I believe HP and Lenovo and those guys are still going, although they have those kind of off strip kind of locations or off, show locations.
Yeah. They really should have a suite in the parking lot that this keeps up.
Yeah, like have it outside.
Outdoors.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh, golly gosh.
Crazy.
Well, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that this had to happen, but I didn't go to my exercise class this morning, in my little small way. Well, I feel we had an outbreak of Omicron down the road a piece, actually where my daughter lives. A restaurant right next door had a little party. 40 people came down with COVID, even though they were all shot and boosted.
Yeah.
Wow. And
now, hopefully, this will be like a lesser case for these people, right?
Yeah, if you're boosted, even if you get it, and the problem is the chance of breakthrough is much higher than it used to be, and this is much more contained. What'd you say?
Well, this is another way to beat the pandemic, right? The first way is just get vaccinated, but since that's not working out, the second way is everyone gets COVID, and then they build up a resistance to it. So I guess that's another way to do it. But,
there's a high price for that, but
there is.
Most of us will survive.
The good news is the freeway is going to open right up.
Oh, man.
You know,
I had a caller on the tech guy on Sunday said, I'm going to Thailand to go surfing. He said, it's great. The reefs have recovered. The beaches are beautiful. I almost said, oh, good. Let's all go back and spoil it now.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Maybe shouldn't have mentioned that to anyone else, but
yeah, it's a secret. So anyway, we're here. By the way, well done with Chris last week. Chris Caposello was great.
Isn't he amazing?
Love Chris.
Always a great guy. Yep.
I'm sorry I hung up on you guys last week. I was just getting mad. I can't remember why.
Click.
At the end.
Yeah. But no, my internet just poofed.
Yeah, you lost it. Actually, did we end the show without you? I think we did because we couldn't get it back. Yeah.
I can't believe you didn't wait for me, but that's okay.
Oh, Paul.
No, it's okay.
Did you find out what happened?
Yeah, what happened is I have a bulky Google Wi-Fi router that I probably need to replace.
Yeah, I never was a fan of those. Mary Jo, you're listing a little bit to the left. Is there anything we can help you with?
This is global warming has brought water.
What's going on over there? Can you hear me? Oh, she's lost us. She's giving the international signal for I can't hear you.
Okay.
So we're going to pause for station identification all up and down the Windows Weekly broadcast network. And you hear me now?
I can. I just switched my ports around because I'm like, maybe this will make it better. I think it did.
Was it bad?
I could hear like weird interference sounds.
Oh, okay.
Like sounds from a spaceship, you know, when you hear that spaceship sound in your head, you know that sound?
Paul, I think
were you abducted as a child?
I think she's got into the peanut butter whiskey. I don't want to say anything.
Did you live in New Mexico?
I got up really early today, guys. Like 5:30.
You flew out today.
I did.
Oh, yeah. Lordy. Well,
that's incredible.
My goodness, you're a brave soul.
Or dumb, or both.
Aunt Pruitt said, I'm going to CES. We said, no, you're not.
No,
No, you're not. I know people love it, but don't go. It's not worth it. It's just not worth it. Yeah. I'll be curious to see. I mean, it's what, January 5th. So it's about 2 weeks away. I bet you other companies are going to announce they're pulling out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I would guess so as well. Yeah.
Maybe it will be more manageable. We can say.
Yeah, fewer people so you can get around on the floor.
Yeah.
Cab lines are shorter.
Right.
And it's great because as attendees die off during the conference, it'll even get better. So, I know.
It started out busy, but then it started to become the beginning of a zombie movie.
And very quiet.
Really quiet.
Very, very quiet. All right, let's. This is Windows Weekly, so this is what we have to talk about. Yeah. The top. I think this is fun. You like to do this. I love to do this.
Yeah.
We do it all in one show. Next week, by the way, is a best of. So we'll have moments from the year gone by. But this year, we're going to, Paul and Mary Jo will look at the, Microsoft in 2021, and then maybe a little look ahead as well. It was certainly, the things that come to mind, and I'm sorry to say this, for Microsoft in 2021 are not necessarily the best things.
Well, there was that Office visual refresh. That was nice.
There was Print Nightmare. There were some bunch of security issues.
Yeah.
Bunch of patches, bunch of 0 days.
So
and then there was Windows 11. So
right. And generally speaking, I wait until the week between Christmas and New Year's to do my kind of end year wrap up stuff, and I'll have our tech guy kind of look and tell me what all the engagement stuff tells us is the most popular articles and so forth. But Windows 11's, from my perspective, right at the top of my head. And Mary Jo did this part of it did the notes basically, and I'm glad you put that first because for me, Windows 11 was the singular event of the year. It came out of nowhere. Yeah. For me anyway, and I have to tell you, I listened to the Run As radio episode that you did with Richard Campbell. I have a couple of quibbles I'd like to. No, I'm just kidding. No, it was nice.
Yes,
but you did an episode with him around the timing of I think when it came out or whatever. You guys were talking about that, and I agree with everything that you both said about it. I mean, it came out of the gate kind of quick, and incomplete. Yeah. And I think one of the big questions, and maybe this is something for the next half of the show, but is how they fix that problem in the coming year. And we talked to Chris Capicell a little bit about that. He didn't give us any specifics on that, of course, but the indication is that Microsoft has at least heard the feedback, and we'll hopefully, we'll see how it goes. But the one thing that he said that really mirrored something I'd written in my review, which I really liked, because obviously I would like that, is that Windows 11 is not going to hurt people. It's like for normal people, it's going to be fine. It's prettier. It's more modern and so forth. I told you, Mary Jo, offline recently, my brother-in-law asked me, but he got 2 computers. I think you said someone in your family has gotten this upgrade request. Should I do it? It's like, yeah, you're fine.
Yes.
But I think the people that are most blown away by it are power users, right? Because we all have these specific workflows that we're so used to doing. And a lot of that stuff is gone, as part of the simplification of Windows 11. Yeah. So it's the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few kind of situation. I think they'll probably bring some stuff back. I don't think we're ever going to get right back to Windows 10 where that was at, but I think that's okay. Like at least power users can handle that kind of.
Right. I was trying to think back to like June when we were getting briefed about Windows 11 and what was kind of exciting and fresh. And when you're trying to think of what am I going to write about this, right? The first thing for me, like the top thing that came out was you're only going to have to do one feature update a year. Like forget about the operating system itself. Like that was the big thing, right? Like, they finally figured that out, that people didn't want to do 2 updates a year, right?
And they figured it out for Windows 10 too, which was a nice surprise, right?
Which is nice. Yeah. But also the other thing, which isn't going to be until next year now, is the Windows subsystem for Android, right? And that seemed really exciting at the time because we didn't know a lot about it. And it's like, you can run any Android app on Windows. Not exactly, right? And that's not how it works. But I still think that was a big deal. The OS itself, like the look and feel and the changes, the new store, I was like, they're all nice. I felt like they were really incremental and nothing like a big bang type thing. The change in the hardware requirements, which they kind of hid from us when they were briefing us. And then that came out on the day of.
Yeah, that was handled really
badly,
poorly. And not surprisingly, the communications around all this stuff was terrible.
It was, they kind of backtracking. When we asked about the hardware requirements, they said, any modern PC is going to be fine. And they just didn't tell us all the things about TPM at that point and how a lot of PCs wouldn't be allowed to upgrade or that you could, but you'd have to kind of take things into your own hands, right? And decide, is it worth possibly being unsupported if I do that? So I feel like that was a really big and important thing, but they definitely hid that from us when we were being about the
purposefully. And there is a case to be made, and not to keep mentioning this, but you and Richard made this case at the time that this was a kind of a necessary step for the ecosystem, right? This isn't just to drive new PC sales, although that will be a byproduct of that. Yeah. But with Windows 10, the message was we want to get everyone on the same version, and I would say by the end of that 5 or 6 year cycle, 5.5 year cycle, whatever. Yeah. They, if you look at the stats, I mean, most people running Windows 10 are on the very latest of the next latest version. So they got pretty close to that. But they didn't have any way to enforce the hardware component of it. In particular, I think, the CPU one I still don't understand, but I've never heard a logical justification for that. But the TPM 2.0 thing, okay, we get it. And so I think they could have done it a little better, for sure. But the fact that they are letting people in if they know how to work around it, and they're not yet, I mean, we were only a few months in, but they're not yet going after those people or preventing them from getting security updates. I don't think anyone could ever imagine Microsoft doing that. It just doesn't.
Right. I don't either. We can't promise it. We can't promise it.
No, but it's the whole point of
doesn't make sense.
Charade is for security, and now you're going to deny security updates to the people. It just doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't.
So we can't promise. You're right, but I gotta be shocked
Stunned.
if there was ever a month where all the people weren't getting security updates.
Same.
So we'll see. I mean, the reason I keep mentioning the podcast thing, by the way, is just that I think Richard asked this question. I think it's an important question because it is really the central question about Windows 11. Why? And why then?
Did they do it? Yeah.
Why did they do it then? We're in the middle of the worst the only component shortage of this kind ever experienced by the industry, by the world. Let's launch a new product that requires new hardware, and there's no new hardware. You can't get computers. I mean, it's kind of strange. I suppose you could make the argument the first wave is for upgraders, right? And they'll do that on their own little measured basis.
Right.
And maybe in the coming year, we'll see. But hopefully next year we'll have more hardware. But it was a strange time to do it. It just kind of came out of nowhere, and it didn't seem to make sense. I never heard a justification for why now.
No. I kept wondering, and they never made this connection either. But when they decided not to do Windows 10X, which was going to be really a very revolutionary version of Windows because everything was going to be virtualized. I'm like, you know what? They had a lot of plans in place for that. They showed the product. They showed us how it was going to work, talked about all the different ways the virtualization would work for each part of the operating system. And then they just were like, you know what? We're not going to do that. We're throwing it out. We're not doing that. I'm like, okay, so when you do that, you have to have something to fill in, right? Because you've promised everybody this pretty major new thing. And then you're like, we're not going to be able to pull that off. So we need something. We got to have something because we've already generated this idea, right? And
you can actually draw a line between, there's 3 milestones that occurred there that are kind of interesting. And now I can kind of see how we moved in this, where we ended up. Windows 10X was originally, remember, dual screen devices, right? Supposedly. Like that's how they kind of marketed it in the beginning.
Yeah.
Okay, whatever. I think we all know that wasn't the case, but whatever.
Right.
And then and like you said, they were working on this virtualization scheme, a containerization scheme or whatever, which is very interesting. And I still think, I hope they're still pursuing that, but whatever. And at some point they said, well, you know what? Actually, we're just going to launch this on clamshell machines first, and then we'll go to dual screen next. And then the next step, the final step is, well, now we're just going to do Windows 11. And Windows 11 is Windows 10 with the Windows 10X UI. Actually, that's the end of the sentence, right? I mean, it's pretty much what it is. They got all the technical underpinnings of that 10X thing are gone. And at one point there might have been some family, or not really family, but generation of dual screen devices from some number of OEMs for Windows 10X. But now that 10X is gone, you just see new PCs, and now they just target Windows 11. And it's a lot more of them, obviously, but it replaces Windows 10.
Yeah. I mean, they did say when Windows 11 launched, they tried to make the case that a lot of what was going to be in 10X is actually in 11. Actually, from what I can tell, what that a lot is the UI, right? The start menu idea is what was also going to be in 10X. But all the underpinnings, all the way they were going to do the virtualization, none of that is in Windows 11.
Well, the stuff that was the stuff that made 10X maybe the next NT, right? Which was one of those conversations we would have had, disappeared.
Right.
You have to. I mean, maybe they were thinking about Android app compatibility. That type of thing would have made sense on mobile devices, right? That 10X might have targeted. It makes a little less. Maybe a lot less sense. It makes some sense, of course, on Windows 10 Windows devices like PCs, but it might have made a lot more sense on whatever you want to call it, mobile devices.
Right. So when I think back about like the highlights of the year for Windows, I think about Windows 11, 10X going away officially.
Right.
And then I also think about, although it's not truly Windows 10 or 11, I think about Windows 365, the cloud PC stuff, because that was another thing that we had heard rumored for like 2 years. And I remember I kept writing about it and everyone's like, I think you're wrong because this still hasn't shipped. And I think you are getting some bad info. And it just took them a while, but then they did come out with the Windows 365 cloud PC stuff this year. And I think, I was going to say, I think someday that's going to be huge. And I think it's going to start out kind of gradually. My question was, do you think this has changed the world in any way? No,
no. So, I mean, it kind of appeared. It's interesting because it's new. Yeah. Sort of new. And then you don't really hear much about it.
No. I think there were some missing pieces that they started filling in, like the ability to. I think they didn't have the ability to use Azure Active Directory or domain connected PCs at first, and they fixed that now. I think the pricing put some people off because I think a lot of people were like, "Oh yeah, this is just going to be awesome. This is just going to be like really cheap, Windows in the cloud, and everybody like consumers are going to use it." And I'm like, no, that's not where they're trying to do here, right? This is not the market. The market is business users for now, at least. Right. But I think next year and going forward, this is going to become a bigger and bigger deal. I think this year it was kind of like almost like a soft launch, because when it finally did ship, everybody's like, "Oh, there it is. That's the cloud PC thing." Okay, not as exciting as we were wanting it to be, but
that's right.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I still would make it if I was saying what were the biggest Windows news nuggets of the year, I would definitely put it in there because it did finally ship, and I think it has implications for the future, but it's not really changing things in 2021 for a lot of people, I would say. Yeah.
Right.
And then what else? When I was on my site going back and looking and being like, was this a big deal? Was this not a big deal?
Yeah.
One of the ones I kind of thought was, Teams. We have to talk about Teams, obviously, because it was, remote work from home, hybrid work, and Teams really
we don't actually
benefited.
know what it is. I guess it's going to be hybrid work. We'll check in with you again in the spring. Who knows?
Right. But we talk about this on every show pretty much, but every single week we get this giant list of new features from Microsoft about here's all the things we added to Teams this week. Right. And it's been a huge year for Teams. I think the one thing that I would note is the growth is starting to slow for Teams finally. And the way we know that is twofold, right? They changed the way they measure users. Once they changed it from daily to monthly active users. I think that's what they did.
When Microsoft moves the goalposts, that's how you know
something is off.
The previous metric isn't working anymore.
Right, and when you ask them why, they didn't have an answer. Like it was just like, that's just the way we should measure it now. So that's one way the Teams growth was slowing a bit, and also there was around when was this? Like around September, October. The annual report comes out and all information about executive compensation and such, and buried in one of the SEC filings was an acknowledgement that they had projected a certain amount for Teams growth for this year and they missed. So it wasn't a huge miss.
I think that's almost like a pandemic hangover thing. And I don't mean that the pandemic has not ended. I don't mean it like that. But there's this general understanding as this Omicron thing surges, and I'm sure there'll be future problems.
Yeah.
We're just kind of collectively tired of it. We're not reacting the way we did in March 2020 anymore. So things have matured a little bit. Obviously, we have vaccinations and we have better understand what's going on. But the growth that Microsoft saw with Teams and other products in 2020 was artificial.
It was.
It was explosive, and it's reasonable to expect that will,
taper
slow
off a
down.
little, right?
And I guess it did maybe faster than they thought it was going to, but I don't know. To me, that's not surprising.
No, me neither. And we always talk about law of large numbers. Like when you're growing at 100% a year, that can't continue because the number of users gets bigger and bigger, and you can't keep going at 100%, right?
Well, I can tell you why they changed the metric, right? How does Wall Street react when Azure doesn't grow at 70% after 12 years? Or
instead it's 69 and
instead of 70, oh my God, it's falling through the floor. And it's like, guys, double-digit growth of a 20-year-old product is incredible.
Yeah, it is. I know.
But that might have something to do with it. It gives them a number that most people aren't going to pay attention to how they used to measure things anyway. So
but we are sure that this whole push for Teams is going to continue next year, and it's going to still be a big thing. They're not suddenly just going to go, Teams, that was so 2021. Now we're moving on to this. There is no other thing.
No. Teams is the center of the entire Microsoft 365 universe. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And when you think about the things, when people think of Office, right? They think of Word and Excel, PowerPoint, and Outlook, probably, right? None of those things are growing. None of those things can add exponentially amazing more new features over the next couple of years. None of that. But Teams can, and Teams is a brand new platform. It's still explosive growth. It's not just, it's the present, but it's also, I think, the future, of the user experience of Microsoft 365. It's huge.
Yep. I'll talk about this a little more in our second part where we talk more about what's next. But I think this a couple of years ago, there were all these leaks about MetaOS. And I think next year might be the year that happens. And if it does, that's going to have implication for Teams, Outlook, Windows, Edge, everything in the Microsoft stack, if I'm right. I'm kind of going out on a limb because that term has been around for a couple of years and very seldom do we ever hear anything about it. But I feel like Fluid Framework is kind of the tip of the MetaOS iceberg. I'm mixing a lot of metaphors in there. But
no, that's good. No, that works. And remind people what that is. This is something that could supplant a lot of those things I just mentioned, Word, Excel, PowerPoint.
Right.
It's a new way to collaborate.
It's a platform, right? So MetaOS is this idea of a platform where instead of having these discrete, separate applications like Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, which won't go away, by the way, but in their place is a bunch of components that you could kind of stick together and turn into your own app within a canvas. So that's where Fluid Framework fits in because it's turning these things into loops, as they call them now. And if you stick a bunch of loops together, like to-do lists, all these things, they had a polling thing, and you start combining these as developers, probably using Power Platform, probably also using Visual Studio, you can create these like hybrid apps that consist of all different components instead of just having these monolithic apps that do one thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. Yeah. If you have different departments at some organization and some people need specific things that are part of Word or Excel or whatever, you don't have a way to customize that to their needs. They just get the full-blown thing. But with this Fluid Framework, you have the ability to give different people exactly the tools that they need or the combination of tools on a single canvas or whatever. Yeah, I think if you think about the Power Platform as the idea of automating apps and kind of linking apps together, the thing underneath that, the glue, so to speak, the thing underneath that is MetaOS and this idea of using Fluid Framework and the Graph APIs and all these other kind of infrastructure components we've all heard about in a cohesive way to build something new. I do think Power Platform is going to fit in with this somehow, but I don't know how. Sure. Well, because I think you actually kind of step through it. It's because developers in an organization might make custom, we'll call them apps for lack of a better term, that combine all these components or loops or whatever they're called into a single solution for users. But users themselves will also combine things and make their own little ad hoc dashboard or whatever it is. And it's the type of activity that will span professional developers all the way down to just normal knowledge workers or whatever we're calling them now.
I feel like bots are kind of the precursor to this. You know how Microsoft was really pushing people that anybody could build a bot, and you have Power Virtual Agents, and you have all these bot technologies and bot framework and bot composer. And it's like, hey, anyone can make a bot to do something within Teams or anywhere, right? I think this is going to just extend
one
that.
prediction that will be 100% accurate is that 25 years from now, someone will be making a Fluid Framework canvas that will be like a postage stamp sized embedded version of Word that has all the toolbars turned on, so you only have like room for one character to type anything, just to prove that you can still do that.
Exactly. Just don't touch Notepad, okay? That's the one.
Right.
Yeah, but I think I hope next year we hear more about this, because I feel like that parable of, the blind men and the elephant, where they're all blind and they're all touching an elephant, and one feels a trunk and one feels a tusk and one feels a tail. And you say to the three of them, what are you touching? And none of them know, because you can figure out the parts, but I'm like, what hangs this whole thing together, right? How does it work?
Yeah.
I want my architectural diagram, Paul. I want somebody to draw that.
Those are notoriously inaccurate, but I'm sure you will get one.
They are. I love them. I know they're inaccurate, but they kind of help me when I'm thinking about like a very abstract concept or something really difficult. Like I'm like, oh, now, okay, I think of layers, layer cakes. I'm old school.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we should mention Xbox, just to get it off of the enterprise stuff for a second.
Yeah, we should. We really should. Yeah.
I don't know if I talked about it enough last week, but this was an interesting year for Xbox, and not just because there was a component shortage that made it impossible for anyone to get consoles, but Microsoft is well underway toward this cloud-based future for the platform. And I will say, just personally, for the first time ever, I've finally been able to play games on xCloud or Xbox Cloud Gaming, right, which is that feature of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, where it actually worked. I've had really serious lag and latency issues in the past, and I had heard that they fully transitioned to Xbox Series X up in the data center, and I don't know if this is what caused it or if it was just other things they've done, but I've had terrible, up until less than a month ago, terrible results using this product. And now I've successfully played Halo Infinite on it. It works great. So something happened, and that's good, because it was kind of a rumor, I guess, but there was news recently, I think it was Bloomberg, reported that Sony is basically going to have the same exact kind of service sometime in 2022. And by the way, it could run on Azure, because we know Microsoft and Sony announced that partnership for future game services, I don't know, sometime maybe last year. So, in the confine of how things could have gone, at least they have this to fall back on. And they have an answer when someone says, what am I going to do? I can't buy this console for my kid or for myself or whatever it is. And they say, well, subscribe to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, and then you'll get it all on whatever device. And it's kind of cool because, that you don't need new hardware to make it work.
Wow, that was an exciting Xbox segment. I'm all.
You know what's funny? I was thinking this year, like I've heard so many Microsoft reporters say, "Oh man, this year, for being a pandemic year, it was very busy." But if you don't cover gaming, this year wasn't that busy.
Oh, that's
right?
interesting.
Because
it was mostly games.
Yeah,
there was so much gaming news, and there was a lot less of traditional enterprise news. There was.
Yeah, Microsoft bought a lot of studios over the past year, which I think was big. They've done a great job of bringing day-and-date games out to Xbox Game Pass right when they release for purchase. They signed that deal with EA Play, the electronic arts service. So you get that as part of the subscription as well. Hundreds of games now. Lots of them support the game streaming thing, which is amazing. I think it's over 100 on game streaming alone. Dozens, I don't remember the exact number, but some dozens support touch controls where you can play them directly on your phone or tablet or whatever you have without having to connect a controller. It really, the diversification of Xbox is the best possible outcome after the disaster that was the launch of the Xbox One, where they completely coughed up every advantage they had in the previous generation and reversed the tables on themselves. When the Xbox 360 came out, it was a year ahead of the PS3. The PS3 came out, it was $200 more than Xbox 360. They had a commanding lead for several years there. They eventually kind of tied it up, but it worked out really well for Xbox in the beginning. So when the Xbox One came out, they're like, well, let's bundle the Kinect and we'll launch at the same time as Sony, and we will charge $100 more than Sony is charging. It's like, guys, didn't you learn anything from the way you did so well the last time? And they said, and this isn't that Xbox documentary we'll talk about again later, but someone did there's probably a lot of these, but someone did a great mashup video of all the times they said TV during the launch of the Xbox One.
TV? And like you can play it on your TV?
No, that you can watch TV instead of like games, because everyone tuned in to see what the games were. And they only talked about like 2 or 3 games. Yeah, I remember. It was like TV.
And it had a pass through. They really wanted you to watch your TV through that. Yeah.
And there's a lesson to be learned there, which is that video game players like to play video games. It sounds obvious in retrospect.
Well,
I felt
it's more than gamers. They jumped on TV when TV was dying. I mean, honestly, But anybody under 30 doesn't watch TV at all. You know, they watch.
Well, two things to TV services and whatnot. First of all, I think the world does not need another way to watch TV on your TV. Okay,
that's true.
We have plenty of ways to do that.
That's
the other one is if you want to watch something like Netflix or HBO Max or whatever the service is, we have these little hockey puck things that are silent, don't have fans, and they cost like $79.
Yeah.
You don't pull up a battleship every time you want to go through Dunkin' Donuts drive-thru and get a cup of coffee. You know what I mean?
Well, to
like
that
this is
point,
the wrong
one of the
tool
things
for that
became
job.
frustrating is there was always an update before I could watch TV. So it was like, you know, come on, I don't need to have to update this to watch. Yeah, you're right. It was the wrong platform.
It just didn't make
for
sense.
something like just tuning in a TV show. Yeah.
It's just it's such a it's just such a big tool for this job.
But I don't fully blame them because they jumped on a bandwagon in the middle of a complete sea change. And
but there were two parts to it, right? So there was the TV thing, which what we just talked about, but there was also that Connect bundling thing, which raised the cost of the console an extra $100. And they made it a requirement for developers, and everyone was like, "We don't want anything to do with this." I was the only one who
liked it, but I loved the Connect.
No, some people, obviously some people really did like it, and it's, it can correctly be seen as a response to the Wii, the Nintendo Wii, which had those kind of nunchuck controllers, and their whole deal was, what if we can do this with no controller? Like your body's the controller, and there's some good ideas there.
There was some exercise stuff that was really cool. Yeah, it's funny. Apple's basically duplicating it, and not as well with iFit. Your watch becomes the Connect.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly right.
And the Connect really did it without a watch. It was really great.
Yeah. Yep.
Sometimes timing is all. It's not a bad idea. It's just a poorly timed idea.
Yeah. Like so many Microsoft ideas.
Well, that's hard. That's not just Microsoft. It's hard for every tech company to get the timing right. That's out of your control.
For being first is often not it has nothing to do with being successful. In fact, it's often a problem if you want to be successful. But
in a way, the thing that bit Microsoft worse than anything is the supply chain this year. I mean,
yes, but like I said, at least they have an answer to that, right? If you want to buy a Sony console and you can't get one, there's really not much you can do about that. You just keep playing whatever the thing you have is.
Except
there is this offer.
You can get the PlayStation 5. And
that I cannot explain.
Yeah.
Well, I can kind of explain it. They're the volume player, right? So
that's the problem. You're right. If it were an equal inability to get it, but it isn't. And we have PlayStation 5s. I've bought several.
Well, but just if you're an Xbox guy or person or whatever, and you want the new Xbox and you can't get it, some of the neat things that can happen are because of backward compatibility, you can do things like play Flight Simulator on your Xbox One, that game is not compatible with, but because of the ability to stream that game, you can play it through Xbox Game or Xbox Cloud Gaming.
Another point: you don't need an Xbox to stream those games.
That's true too. That's true. Well, my point being only that you can stay on whatever you have until you can get an Xbox, and you can still play next-gen games, even though they don't technically support your particular device, or you can play them on a PC.
You can play them on an iPad.
Yeah. So you can play them on whatever you want, but but that to me is very important. It's not something that the Microsoft of 20 years ago when the Xbox first came out would have ever even considered for a moment. That you're going to take these games and make them playable everywhere. I mean, the story of how backward compatibility happened, how Microsoft was able to bridge at first just hardware platform differences as they went from Intel to PowerPC on the Xbox 360 back to Intel/AMD, whatever. How do you bring those games forward? They don't run natively across platform. They figured that out for hundreds and hundreds of games.
Yep.
That's a really neat thing.
That's maybe the big gaming story of the year.
Well, a lot of it happened before this past year, but when you land in 2021, what you have is diversification of hardware because you can stream or games to all these different device types. You can play next generation titles on previous generation hardware. You can play next generation titles on PCs that couldn't possibly play a game if their life depended on it, but because you're streaming it, that actually works. It's nice. I mean, there are so many entry points to the Xbox ecosystem now that by the time the Xbox Series X does become available, a lot of people who might have bought it in November 2020 won't even care. And
frankly, I think xCloud, talk about timing, was timed perfectly because remember Sony had Gaikai, Nvidia's had their cloud playing, but xCloud's timing was just spot on.
Like what was that on play, or there was a
there was one
company out of Seattle.
And they couldn't stay alive because they couldn't manage peak bandwidth.
Right. Yeah. And they eventually tried to just do remote Windows desktop streaming, as I remember.
Right.
But Microsoft has the capacity, right? So they're in a good place. You know, that cloud thing is. I think it's going to have legs.
If there's a disappointment for me this year, I mean, I think Windows X was a disappointment. I was really hopeful for that. But if there's a disappointment for me this year, is I really thought this would be the year Microsoft would virtualize the desktop more aggressively. I know they did it. Yeah. But I honestly,
I think they ran into technical issues. That was. We are so stuck in the past with Windows from this, literally from a 640K barrier back from 1982 or whatever that thing came out. It's been dogging us forever, and for all the right reasons, right? Microsoft respects backward compatibility because its customers demand it, et cetera. So it's for the right reasons, but it really has held back the platform. And when you look at things like the M1 racing ahead, and Windows 10 and ARM, I don't know what it's doing, sitting in the corner looking stupid. It's sad that we haven't been able to make these leaps, but we did it in the name of backward compatibility. And if they could ever figure out a container, virtualization, whatever solution that could just put x86 in the box that it deserves, just put it over the corner, and just let those apps run on some other thing that is maybe it could be this MetaOS thing you're talking about, right? That would be huge. I think they went for it.
I mean, we're not yet ready for next year, but your
10X
predictions
to come back.
Well,
I don't. No.
He means like MetaOS.
And Cloud PC. You know, and the idea of virtualization.
Cloud PC, I think, will get a lot bigger and more understood and accepted.
It just has to get cheaper. Is all it has to get.
Yeah, it has to get cheaper for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there also has to be a multitude of issues, including supply chain issues.
I don't think so. Right. I think the natural progression of that product, which is called the Windows 365, right?
365
is not a Windows desktop and a window or full screen on some other device. I don't really think that's it. I think what people really want is the ability to run specific apps. It's the reason that Apple users on Macs wanted some virtualization solution like Parallels or whatever, because not to run Windows, right? It was to run specific apps that weren't available in that platform. And I feel like that's part of the way forward. If you can have a modern platform of whatever kind, it could be of your choosing, but you can virtualize or stream apps, you know, from Windows, but you don't have to see Windows. I mean, you might be running Windows, that's fine. But maybe you're on an iPad or a Chromebook or whatever.
Yeah. You know, what's funny is that pitch is a pitch that the Cloud PC team made when they announced the product. But I feel like people didn't grasp what they were saying, right? I'm like, they're telling you can have a very relatively low power machine and run some really high intensity, big apps because you're just running them in the cloud. You're not running them locally. And I don't think people thought about it that way. This is
literally, we just had this conversation about games. It's exactly the same thing. You could have a laptop that has Intel integrated graphics, or you could have a Chromebook or whatever it is running on some low-level Qualcomm chipset. This thing is not capable of doing anything dramatic. But if you can stream it from the cloud, that thing up in the cloud can have whatever hardware it wants. And you're just streaming it. I mean, this opens up an interesting...
I think you're right about the apps, too, because if I want a cloud gaming system, I don't want the whole Xbox experience. I just want to play that game.
No, you just want the game.
Yeah,
exactly.
Right.
So I think the apps is exactly right. Just give me, if I could, and what a great world for Microsoft. I can run Windows apps anywhere.
It's perfect. And by the way, even from, for all Windows is whatever size business it is. We sell X number of some couple 100 million computers a year. That seems to have stabilized. That business is whatever the size it is. But that cloud business that we're talking about that serves these apps could serve an audience that's much, much bigger than 200 million, 250 million, whatever. It could be 1 billion people. Some of them will be on phones or tablets or, like I said, Chromebooks, whatever. They could be on TVs, smart TVs. Who cares? Every once in a while, You need to get into an app that maybe you're not on the exact kind of device you need to run that app, not to mention the fact that the thing has to be installed, updated, managed centrally by your IT department, whatever it is. You know, you could just have this one entry point up on the cloud. It's not perfect, but it is a way forward, and I think it makes sense for Microsoft customers and for Microsoft.
We have to rewrite.
It's a win-win.
What was the old Microsoft mission statement that they put on the sidewalk as you're walking around the
one
campus?
Computer on every desk for every user.
Running Windows. Now,
running, of course, yeah, running Windows.
Well, but now now it's like an application anywhere running on Azure.
A Windows application anywhere.
Running on our platform on Azure.
Yep.
That's a true platform company. That's what made Windows a success. It's what made DOS a success before that. It was a platform. And now Microsoft's perfectly positioned to do that.
I wasted more time this year, and I will continue doing it next year, complaining about little picayune problems with Windows 11. I can't right-click on something and something doesn't happen, whatever it is. The truth is, like, most people are like, I just need to see Word or whatever the app is, right? They don't. The interface thing is like whatever, you know. My wife, also, my brother-in-law, like I said, both asked me in the past week if they said, hey, I got this Windows 11 upgrade thing. Should I do it? And I'm like, yeah, it's fine. It won't kill you, you know?
I tell people the opposite. I say, you got till 2025. Yep.
Oh, wow.
You do have time to wait, but we all know Microsoft, right? What's your life going to be like if you wait as an individual? This thing is going to nag you for the rest of your life.
It will.
You know?
Right.
That's mostly what I'm telling people is how to turn off the nag.
Yep.
That's the real thing.
Right.
Well, I
How
guess
often
the point,
do you get nags? Like every month, right? At least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know
because I succumbed and I have Windows 11. So
right, I succumbed immediately. I don't think it will do any damage to normal people, and I think that's fine. I mean, for all the complaining,
that's a really good motto for a company. It won't do any damage to normal people.
Well, but think about the alternative, because back in the day, upgrading from one version of Windows to another was actually a fairly traumatic event that could end in failure.
Right.
Windows 11 is really just a monthly cumulative update. It happens to change the UI pretty dramatically, or not, depending on your perspective, but it changes it. That's something that most Windows updates never did. And it is a version upgrade, I guess, right? There's certainly underpinning things they're doing that are different, but it seems like it's really safe. It doesn't seem like there's anything missing that normal people would be freaked out by, like I am, or might be, you know, or other power users might be.
Yeah.
It's honestly in the scope of like Windows upgrades, this is
that's true.
It's fine because it's prettier and it's nicer and it doesn't seem to do any damage. I agree with you. You know?
I think if a normal user, not a power user, asks you, should I upgrade? I would say yes, if your hardware can do it.
Yeah. Right.
If a power user asks you, that's a different thing, right? Because they're
you're
going
to have a long conversation. Yeah. How much do you rely on the things you do every single day? Because some of those are going to be gone.
Do things break? Do things go away?
Yeah. Well, okay. So this is actually one of the weird things about Windows 11. Windows 11 actually has a different set of inbox apps than Windows 10 does. If you upgrade from Windows 10 to Windows 11, the things that are missing in Windows 11, by and large, actually continue forward because they're already on your computer. But if you do a clean install of Windows 11, or you buy a new computer, you're not going to get those things, right? So what are those things? They're nothing important in my mind, but it's things like, Skype actually is one of those things, right? Skype's not installed, is not part of Windows 11. Paint 3D is another example in that 3D entry in the File Explorer. Stuff like that. So does anyone rely on that? And is there going to be some community of people who are like, well, I'm going to install Windows 10 first and upgrade because that's the only way I can get those apps I need or something? Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, I don't think so. And I don't think most normal people.
But here's the thing. I mean, if it doesn't affect you, okay, fine. But you get nothing for Windows 11. So why even take the chance?
Yeah. There's claims you get better performance. No, there have been claims and some benchmarks. Some people have benchmarked that it has better performance. I don't know.
Unless you're on AMD.
Say that. Yeah. Didn't they fix that? I thought they fixed that.
Yeah, they did. But this is all. Don't upgrade if you don't need to upgrade is the rule.
Seriously, for a Windows version upgrade, like a real version. I don't mean like from Windows 10 version something to something else. I mean, from Windows 7 to 8 to 8 to 10 to this is the most minor of upgrades. This is like Windows 98 SE level of nothing. Like, almost have to go back that far. Like it's been a while.
But the one thing that you have to bring up to people is if you care about running a different browser, you might want to be a little cautious about Windows 11.
Well, yeah, and I noticed Edge is not anywhere in this note of the year gone by, but I think Edge is a pretty big story.
Well, okay, so
they began
that's going to come up. That's going to come up in the next year thing.
Okay, but they did begin the year winning the internet with Edge, and they managed to lose it by December. I don't,
Pretty much.
Look, there are going to be some percentage of people who kind of disagree on that, and I am not part of that group, but I'll just say, they like the features, they like whatever, that's fine. And the fact that Microsoft is semi-forcing you to run Edge in certain conditions isn't going to affect them because they've already chosen Edge. They don't care. Yep. Okay, fine. But, I'm working on this book, right? And so I have to kind of take into account what the world is like now, what it's going to be like in the future. Like, how do I handle that today? And honestly, it comes down to, if you want the experience that Microsoft is going to give you in some future version of Windows 11 with as a set as default button, you just have to make changes to 2 file types and 2 protocols in that interface, right? So you installed Chrome or Edge, Chrome or Firefox or whatever. You have to go into that thing, apps, default apps, your browser, HTML, HTTP, HTTPS. And honestly, I don't have a real number, but I would say high 90% of the time, that's the experience you're looking for. It's not as simple as clicking a button. I agree with that. And it will eventually be almost that easy, but it solves most of the problem. And I think for people like my wife, who's a normal human being, or my brother-in-law is sort of a normal human being, if they were to choose Chrome or something, would they struggle today to figure that out? Yeah, they would. They would. That's why I exist in their lives. But if you make those 4 changes, you'll get the experience you expected for the most part, which is damning with faint praise, I think is the term. Yeah. But yeah. So, I mean, I wouldn't say Edge was like one of the worst things that happened in 2021. It is one of the negatives to Windows 11 for sure. It's something they should have handled way better than they did. Yep. And I still see no justification. Honestly, they could have just had a button. Edge could, or Chrome or Firefox could have come up and said, "Hey, do you want to use this as your default?" And you say, "Yeah, I do." And you go to that interface and you click, "Yep." "You sure? We really want you to use Edge." "No, I'm going to use Chrome." If they just did the same thing and made those 4 changes, and that was all they did, I don't think anyone would notice. Anyone normal, you know what I mean? That's all they had to do. Yeah. So they didn't, and that's the bad, good Microsoft, bad Microsoft. I don't know.
It didn't make our top 5.
No,
no, it could have been better. Yeah, could have been better.
So, because you could have called the show "Losing Their Edge," and it would have been like so good.
Well, all right. I know. I don't look. I don't misinterpret what I'm saying. I don't like that they did this. I feel I've been fairly vocal on that in the past, but and like I said, they could have handled this a lot better, and the story would have been, Microsoft is letting you change your default browser, but when you go to widgets, it still runs Edge. That would have been the whole story. And people have been like, yeah, that's not great, but whatever, But instead, they had this convoluted UI that no human being could ever figure out, and that just drew attention to it. All they had to do was make the UI the same and just done in the back end what I just described. And yeah, there would have still been some complaints, but honestly, what would we really be complaining about today? Instead of that, we would be complaining that Windows 10 Home doesn't let you set up the thing without having a Microsoft account. And by the way, there are workarounds to that too, of course, we all know that, but I mean, that would have been the level of complaint. And those are not big complaints. They're complaints, of course, but they're not like earth shattering. I mean, I think the problem was just the way they did it. It was so obviously underhanded. Like it was so terrible.
It was. And then to use as the excuse like Chris Capicella brought up when we asked him about this.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we're trying to make users have a better experience, and that's why we did it that way. I'm like, so that's a terrible answer to this question, I have to say, because it seems very disingenuous.
Look, I understand why he answered the question that way.
I do too.
But it's like when you ask someone a question, you say, do you want this or not? And you say, no, I don't want it. And they say, well, here you go. And you're like, what are you doing? I said, no. And I said, no, this is the better user experience.
Right.
You know, but I specifically just said I didn't want this.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah.
So maybe in 2022, they're going to actually take the feedback to heart.
Yeah, I'm sure. Maybe. Honestly, I mean, we'll get to this later, I guess. But as you look forward to the next year, I think one of the big questions, maybe the big question for Windows 11, is how and when they update it. Mm-hmm. And we've obviously gone back and forth on that a little bit already, but I still believe we're going to see multiple points where they add features to Windows 11 before next October.
Same.
That's my guess. Yeah. I'm just guessing, but that's my opinion.
Yeah. Do you remember this controversy? Man, I don't know what years this was, but it was, did SP service packs in Windows include new features or not include new features?
Yes,
that whole
because they used to have. Remember briefly, they introduced the concept of feature packs.
Feature packs, right? So there's a thing coming in Windows 11 that is called a feature pack, right? Mm-hmm. Not the feature experience pack. There's another one that's I think called a feature pack, or is it a system pack or something like that? But they have all these different updating mechanisms in play beyond just feature experience pack. Like there's system update something. And I'm like, you know what? They've got all these things that they never really explained this year, but these could be channels to get people new features in Windows outside of the feature.
Every once in a while, you'll see a post to the Insider blog where they'll say something like, we just released an update to whatever channel. There are no new features. What we're testing is some servicing infrastructure. And that's exactly what they're testing, is what you just described. And they have multiple ways they can add, or they can change windows midstream now, and we'll see how they do. I'm really curious. I'm curious not only about how and when it happens, but how they explain it. They don't typically do a great job of that, but we'll see.
No, and we'll come back to the same argument and debate that we had with old versions of Windows, which was, is it a feature or is it a fix? Right? Remember that people would be like, well, I wouldn't even call that a feature. It's a fix. I'm like, I call it a feature.
This is like, is it an ad or is it a suggestion? Yes. Well, no, you're suggesting I buy something I don't own. It sounds like an ad. But people kind of go back and forth on those things. Yeah. That's a matter of semantics, I guess. But
it is.
Look, the fact remains, Windows 11 will be updated at some point next year. And I believe it will happen multiple times, not just once before October.
Same. Me too.
Whatever form that takes. I can't wait to find out.
Okay. How about Teams? How about it, huh? How about
Teams? Going to keep going.
Yeah.
No, you know what? The other story, we didn't bring this up yet, but I thought Microsoft was really going to buy Discord. This is one that I thought actually made a bit of sense compared to them buying like Pinterest, right? I'm like,
TikTok.
Oh, well, TikTok made zero sense to me, but Discord, I could see how they could have made a case for it. And we don't ever know how far the talks got or how much Microsoft was willing to pay. There were rumors 10 billion, right? And then it never happened and Discord went along its merry way. But I was surprised that one fizzled. I was like, oh, they're going to get Discord. I'm pretty sure they're going to get them. It fits in with all their idea of building communities, right? How they've talked about that with GitHub and a lot of other properties that they have. And I'm like, yeah, this one makes sense for them. And then it didn't happen.
We didn't, this isn't in the notes, but the Microsoft has made a couple of acquisitions recently that are
nuance. I mean, you guys didn't mention the biggest.
That's coming up in the 2022.
Okay, that's the future because it hasn't closed yet. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yep.
In which case, I think, if I'm not mistaken, you have entirely covered this year everything that happened in 2021
Well,
not exactly.
I think we might want to go back and go over every month of Xbox Game Pass and see what was added.
Stop. Let's not go crazy here. But that's good. 1 hour, an entire year.
Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah, not bad.
Next, what's likely for 2022? But before we do that, I would like to pause.
I think it's going to get better. It's getting better all the time.
Getting better all the time. You know, it is getting better. Website accessibility, and you can thank these guys right here, our sponsor, UserWay.org. One of the number one complaints I hear from our listeners. We have a lot of disabled listeners, mostly, I mean, blind listeners, of course, because it's audio. But everybody, everybody has different abilities. And sometimes people want easier screens, better contrast. But all of this can be handled with accessibility. There's a web accessibility layer in every browser. And the onus is on you as the website host, the manager, the proprietor, to make your site work with that compatibility layer. And when I say onus, I mean there's actually a legal responsibility. The Americans with Disabilities Act requires that your site be accessible. It's a public entity. Public entities have to be accessible. And there's a well-known Supreme Court case all about that. Domino's Pizza said, hey, our site's accessible. We got a phone number on it. Just call us. And it was fought all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court, which ruled no, that's separate but equal. And as you know, that's not legal. That's unconstitutional. You have to provide equal access. And really, that was a huge victory for blind users and all kinds of users. But now, as a website owner, and I know I went through this, you got to say, well, what does that mean? What do I have to do? How do I make my site accessible? You can hire a team of developers. You could try to do it yourself. I've done both. My suggestion, userway.org. It's actually amazing because it's an incredible AI-powered solution that you put in one line of JavaScript and it automatically enforces all the hundreds of the web, they call them the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, WCAG, W-C-A-G. UserWay can do more than an entire dedicated team of developers. And the proof is in the pudding because more than 1 million websites now use UserWay. 1 million. Coca-Cola, Disney, eBay, FedEx, Walmart, even UNICEF uses it because accessibility for them is job one. It's not just, your legal obligation. It's just the right thing to do. Frankly, it makes business sense. Why would you want to have a shopping cart that 60 million Americans can't use? That's nuts. Your navs. I mean, even sighted users have a hard time with those things like the hamburger menu. The navs are remediated. All the images have alt tags. And this is where the AI comes in and computer vision. The UserWay can just look at every image and say, well, that's the Golden Gate Bridge, add the alt tag. They also give you a very easy facility to interact with the modification so that you can say Golden Gate Bridge at sunset, and it's easy to do that. First thing I would suggest, before anything else, go to userway.org/twit and run the scanning tool. Just see if your website's compatible. If it is, no problem. If it's ADA compliant, you're golden. If it isn't, it'll say, well, you need to work on these things, and this is the easiest way to do it. And by the way, it works with everything. WordPress, Shopify, Wix, AEM, Sitecore, of course, SharePoint, even hand-coded sites. You'll get a detailed report of all the violations that were fixed on your site. Just ask the voice of Siri.
UserWay is trusted by more than 1 million websites and 60 million users with disabilities. Visit userway.org to learn how one line of code can make your website accessible.
She's right. ADA compliance, it's easy. Userway.org. UserWay can make any website fully accessible and ADA compliant. With UserWay, everyone who visits your site will browse seamlessly, can customize it to fit their needs. It's also a perfect way to showcase your brand's commitment to millions of people with disabilities. Go to userway.org/twit. Right now, 30% off UserWay's AI-powered accessibility solution. By the way, they have the plan that we use, this small and medium-sized business, is actually super affordable. But now you're going to get an additional 30% off. You'll breathe a sigh of relief and you say, that's all? Okay, I'll do it. UserWay, making the internet accessible for everyone. It's a great mission. Go to userway.org/twit today. All right, we've looked at the past. Now it's time to venture
Mary
into.
Jo, is the sun going to set in your face? It looks like
it's good.
It is.
It's nice.
That's funny.
It is.
Wow. Don't let the sun go down on me.
Yeah.
I said, if we go too late, though, I'll be in the pitch dark, right?
Well,
Right.
We'll wrap. It is. I mean, yesterday was the solstice, so
it was.
I felt it was a little brighter this morning. I don't know if you guys noticed it.
no, it didn't.
No, it was raining in New York when I left.
But just the days are getting longer. That's the good news.
Yeah, that's right. That's the good
inch
news.
by inch. So,
Got to maintain a positive outlook.
is it going to be a good? Is it going to be? I have a feeling 22 is going to be a good year. Boy, did we get that wrong? By the way, 21 was not. Is
No.
22?
It was still better, though.
It was better.
It
No,
was.
you're right. It was
It
better.
I
was.
mean,
better.
given it was
better.
granted, it was a low bar, but still better.
It was better. You're
Yeah.
right. We had a
Not as better as it could have been, but
yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious to kind of see how the news cycle goes in 2022, right? Will we actually have any conferences to attend in person next year, or will it all still be virtual? Because I feel
When
like
you say conference, you mean like big conferences like Microsoft,
like Ignite, Build,
Yeah.
like because there was AWS reInvent in person at the end of this year, and quite a few people did go to that, but Microsoft decided to keep all their big proprietary conferences virtual, and I think that has a lot to do with what the news cycle looks like in a given year, right? So if we do that again next year, I feel like the news will be again more incremental than big, right?
You think they're saving big news for an in-person event?
I feel like they do. I mean, look at Windows 11. They launched that virtually, and look how much more subdued that was than if we had gone to a physical event.
Panos
right?
is so calm and relaxed.
It's just like walking, and they tried to make it a thing like, don't worry, we're not going to disrupt your work. We're going to make everything look familiar. But
Well, you could disrupt it with like a party. Maybe throw a pinata in there or something. Like,
yeah, it was a very subdued launch, right? And I mean,
sure.
Are we even expecting any major product launches next year? I mean, like, we're not thinking a new version.
Were
of
we
Windows.
expecting Windows 11? I mean, sometimes these things come out of the blue.
No, you know what? We were expecting a new version of Windows. It was going to be 10X, but we were expecting something, right?
Well, yeah, originally, sure.
Yeah. But next year, I mean, you're going to see the Windows subsystem for Android show up, right? And I don't know how exciting or not that's going to be for people. Windows on ARM is just going to chug along, right? Because the processors aren't really ready for PCs, and Microsoft doesn't seem to be really stepping things up there, right?
That's right.
So that's going to kind of chug along. Surface, are we expecting any major new form factors? No, right? We're expecting incremental stuff.
Last year was arguably the biggest year for upgrades on Surface. So what's left, right? If you just look at the mainstream machines, what didn't they update? A Surface laptop is pretty much it.
Yeah.
Will there be a Surface Duo? I don't expect to see Studio again.
I don't either. Same.
In fact, the thing they could and should replace it with, of course, is a display.
Right.
I think that would be very interesting to a lot of people. And that'd be a nice little setup. You have a Surface Studio laptop or Surface Laptop Studio, whatever that thing's called, or a Surface laptop or whatever, and you have a nice Surface display. That's a nice little desktop setup.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they may pull out some huge surprise, like some brand new service, some brand new feature that we haven't thought about or heard any rumors about yet. But so far, the rumor mill is pretty quiet, right? About any big bang kind of new stuff for next year.
Right.
Right.
That's why antitrust has to step in and make some news. That will be fun.
There we go. Yeah.
Give us something to write about, something to debate.
Yeah.
We live in a world where people still think it's fine if Apple wants to charge everyone 30%. What's the problem? it's their platform. And it's like, guys, it's a little more nuanced than that.
Yeah, I'm super interested to see if next year Microsoft starts getting the legal antitrust scrutiny that all the other big tech companies are getting. Amazon, Apple, Google, right? Facebook, Meta, or whatever you want to call them. Microsoft has kind of hid under the radar there, right? But now there are more people because of the things going on with Edge saying, hey, you should look into these guys. And the Nuance thing also, right? Nuance, their big healthcare AI acquisition that they made earlier this year, just this week got EU clearance from the regulators, but it hasn't finished getting all the clearances it needs. And every once in a while you see somebody pop up, like I think it was the UK, saying, yeah, maybe we're not going to approve that, right? And people are worried about Microsoft's power now. I don't think so much as an AI powerhouse or a healthcare powerhouse, but just wondering how Microsoft snapping up all these kinds of companies affects the competition, right?
Yeah, right.
And then there's Salesforce, right?
Right. The Mark Butterfield, God bless him. Microsoft has a monopoly of sorts on the desktop for sure. They're unassailable, I think, in certain markets. I mean, when you look at something like Google Workspace compared to Office or Microsoft 365, I mean, they're not even on the same planet. And the other thing is, for all this, we talked about all these legacy tools like Word and Excel and PowerPoint and everything, and how everything's moving forward to this new paradigm, blah, 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 whatever. But there is a certain segment of, like, say, the Excel user base that could never use something else. Right. It's so ingrained and it's so just a fixture in business. It's just unassailable, Yeah. Could normal people use Google Sheets or whatever it's called? Sure, probably. I mean, but normal people don't use spreadsheets, so whatever. They're so well positioned, and the way that we just talked about how incredible Teams is as a product. No one but Microsoft could have made Teams this successful, or even made Teams, and then integrated it into everything else that they do. It's in Windows for some reason. There is all the things that you can. We talked about this. I don't know if it was before the show or during the show, but the whole iPhone thing with you can sign in with an Apple Watch, which is a $400 product, and that's instead of just having a button that actually works when you have a mask on. This whole ecosystem approach that Apple has is exactly what Microsoft is doing. In the productivity space with Microsoft 365 and bundling Teams instead of charging separately for it, although, they do now in a token way. This is, they've been very successful. And like you said, it's been all under the radar because these other targets are much more high profile with the public, Facebook, Amazon, Google, Apple. But is Microsoft not the second most powerful company on earth or something like that? I mean, they're right there.
Market cap wise.
Yeah. I don't know what that means, though, I mean,
I know.
Well, it means you could buy every country in the world except for the United States and parts of Western Europe.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
When your gross domestic product is higher than that of the entire,
But
EU.
you still have to get EU approval for your Nuance acquisition. So I don't know how powerful you really are. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
That's true. That's true. Well, if they okay it without condition.
You need nuclear weapons to really be a world power, I think.
Well, they are really stepping up their government work, and I'll talk about that when we talk about the cloud in a minute. But they're pretty powerful in that space.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll see.
And then
I expect some scrutiny.
You do, yeah. I don't know if I do. I keep thinking they can't keep being as lucky as they've been. And as we know, the EU really, they're not afraid to take on Microsoft. They've done it several times.
Oh, it's like riding a bike, Mary Jo. They could they could fire that thing up today. All they have to do is change a couple of dates.
Yeah.
I mean, EU has some fangs, if you'll forgive the pun. But
nice.
I have to say, for all of the backing and forthing that CEOs have made to DC and all the testimony and all that, you really haven't seen anything from Congress. Congress is a zip. No. And maybe, I mean, they propose laws, but they can't get anything done. I mean, so that's safe.
Well, as always, in other words, we're relying on the EU is what I'm hearing. And
that's right.
That's probably
the FTC's got, Lena Khan in there, and they've got some fangs again, but I think it's really going to come down to the EU. I think in the US, and and that's for everybody, and Microsoft especially, I think is safe in the US.
Well, there's also private companies that are launching lawsuits like the Epic versus Apple thing, and whatever happens there. I mean, I think we're going to see more of that. There, just smaller companies that were beaten up by big tech without regard to the law, pretty much I think would be the primary concern, or to ethics or whatever.
Although Epic lost 100%. I mean, they're on appeal, but I think it's over.
So we'll see. Oh, we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. But I think it's
not the only one. I mean, that won't be the only time.
No. But
I mean, that judge basically said, I wish you had brought me more evidence because I would like to find Apple guilty of being a monopolist, and you just didn't give me the evidence.
Right.
Like they basically said, would you just do this?
And the one thing that she said to do, which was to open the App Store to third-party payment systems, the Ninth District just said no. And I think that's really a signal from the higher courts that they're not. I think we're in America, baby. I don't see a lot of pushback against big, successful companies.
Nope.
Well, you can show consumer harm and you can show anti-competitive behavior. It's going to happen somehow. I don't,
Interesting.
We'll see.
So you really believe at some point somebody's going to slap these guys down? Not Microsoft.
Yeah,
probably.
It has to happen.
Yeah.
We've already seen the baby steps. Apple, even it seems proactive, but it's actually in response to class action lawsuits or whatever. They've made little steps. They've done that. They've lowered their fee structure from 30 to 15% for most developers, that kind of stuff. So it's already moving in the right direction. I mean, like I said, there are some people who just feel like they should be able to do whatever they want. They're great. I love Apple. I have one of their stickers on my car. Okay, but that's cute. Good. But
nice.
It's more nuanced than that. Like I said, so we'll see. There's already been steps in the right direction. It's not going to get worse. It's either going to stay the same in some ways or it's going to get better, and it's already gotten better. So I think it's going to head in the right direction.
Good. I'm glad you're such an optimist. It's not
I
your
am.
usual
I know.
role.
I don't get enough credit for that
on this show.
I don't know this man. I don't.
So metaverse, I guess we should really talk about Meta.
We should. So, this kind of also was a little under the radar this year, but at Build, Microsoft started talking about the enterprise metaverse. That was back in like May. And I remember seeing the term and I'm like, what the heck is that? That's like some weird term. And then suddenly the term metaverse exploded and everybody was talking about like crypto and Web3 and like
Microsoft
NFTs,
was first to the party. They were there. Yeah.
Except the
so
way
you're saying
Microsoft,
they're going to fail is what I just heard.
Yeah, pretty much, right? Like, no, the way Microsoft talks about the metaverse, though, is very different. They talk about the enterprise metaverse. And what they mean, Chris Capicella made a passing reference to this last week. Remember when he talked about digital twins? That's the cornerstone for them of what they are building around as the metaverse. So for Microsoft, the idea is you can have virtual representations and augmented reality representations of stuff for consumers, for businesses. And that is our definition of metaverse. We're not worried about NFTs and crypto and Bitcoin, although we do have some things in that space. But we're more interested in how you take IoT, digital twins, Azure, and you combine these things to create worlds where you're basically living in an augmented reality space to some extent.
Do you think the hybrid work thing has sort of accelerated that? Right. Like if the pandemic never happened, right? And you and I and 1,000 other people showed up at some Microsoft conference in Seattle or whatever and sat in an audience and they talked about the metaverse, we would all be making fun of it.
Yep.
But now we've all spent okay, no, and that's fair. We should, but you spend 2 years working from home, and not just us who have done it for decades, but the whole world, basically, or half the world, has been working from home, and now this notion of an augmented reality future where I don't have to go to New York City to sit in an office with my coworkers, but I can have what visually appears to be a realistic setting of that type, even though we're all in different physical locations. And then with advanced capabilities in the future where you're interacting with things and so forth. I mean, that's kind of compelling now in a way that maybe it wouldn't have been if the pandemic hadn't happened. So I'm trying to say COVID was great, and it's probably the best thing that's ever happened to us.
I just feel like every time I see these demos of like teams and mesh together, I'm like, isn't this Second Life all over again? Like, what's different about this?
Well, what's different is we can do it in an aquarium. And
okay.
like that demo that Alex Skipman did, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm not sure it's going to really take off in the business world. I think in the consumer space, maybe it will more, but I don't really, I feel like when I'm interacting with people, Teams is enough. Like I don't need to have an avatar representation of myself in a physical space with somebody else. I don't think that's going to change the quality or the content of my interaction.
It's disgusting.
Right? No, are you like being sarcastic? Because I feel like some people
sarcastic.
think
it's literally disgusting.
Okay.
Well, okay, look, we are three people that appear in front of a camera regularly.
In our real flesh instead of some,
I mean, this is not
uncanny valley.
I'm not saying it's enticing to me exactly, but I mean, for people that don't really want that.
Right, who don't want to be on camera all the time.
Isn't most of the internet lurkers?
But that's... So make I guess because they can have a fake persona.
Right.
Maybe.
Right.
Maybe.
Honestly, that's in many ways the problem with many online communities. Like there's been a story recently, Seamus Blackley came out against the toxicity in Xbox Live and said, we should put a stop to that. It's like, Seamus, this has been a problem since the day you launched this thing 20 years ago. It's been something that I and many others have complained about every single year. I complain about people on Xbox Live almost every single day. And now you've seen a video and you think we should fix it? And the reason that toxicity exists is because people can hide who they are, And it's look, I'm not saying people don't confront people in real life. Of course they do. But it happens a lot less often when you can hide behind a cartoon face and pretend you're Bodie McBoatface or whatever name you chose on Xbox Live and not Paul Thurrott or whatever. There are real problems there. But of course, so lurkers lurk, but hopefully that won't be as big of a problem in a work meeting, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I'll be curious if the digital twins part of this takes off more. That to me seems like something that actually has business value. Like it's not about avatars and cartoon characters. It's more about building digital representations of physical assets like plants and supply chain type things, right? That to me, okay, I see what you're doing there, and you're looking at how something will change. Just like when you with these new apps can put a couch in your living room and see how it looks and if it fits. This is the same idea, right? Building out spaces for manufacturing plants and such with digital twins in a way that you can do a what if kind of thing. That to me makes sense. And that
it's
seems
like modeling,
to have,
basically.
Right. Yeah. I guess some people call that the metaverse too, like Microsoft does. But that part makes sense. The other cartoon character thing, I don't know. That to me is kind of like.
You're just making a me. It's a little Weeble looking thing.
Yeah.
That, with no legs in Microsoft's case.
Yeah.
See, that's funny because I thought the whole point of metaverse was to kind of try to replicate the in-person relationship, body language.
That's the end game. Right?
That's what most people define.
We can't.
It as,
that's going from 0 to 10. Like Microsoft is going to 2, right?
Yeah.
In other words, we're going to get there.
Yep.
And then we find out we live in the Matrix.
Yeah.
So. Yep.
All right.
Yeah.
And what does Meta have to do with MetaOS? Is that related?
So nothing. No, which is crazy. Those two names have nothing to do. Metaverse and MetaOS. Nope. As far as I know, they are not related. Right. Well, MetaOS. Some people originally thought it was about turning Teams into an operating system, but it's much bigger than that. It's about how you use things like Fluid Framework and the Graph and like all these pieces Microsoft's been building out as infrastructure to build a platform where you can build apps out of component building blocks, right? So, yeah, I think this idea is continuing. I think they're still working on it. Every once in a while I try to check up on it, and I look at like LinkedIn and I look at who's working on MetaOS at Microsoft, and there are people working on it. Their profiles are very cryptic, so you can't tell what they're doing.
Yep. I think you need to worry about this when it's Mark Ruzinovich.
Exactly.
Or someone, or Dave Cutler.
Well,
or something.
I'll tell you who's running it. So this is this gives you a dose of how big this is. Kirk Konigsbauer at Microsoft is running this. He's the head. He's like the top guy in the Office
world. He used to be high up in the Office, right? Yeah. Say Microsoft 365, but
Yeah, I forget what his new title is, but like Jared Spataro, all those people report to him, right? So it has very high level priority.
Okay.
So yeah, will we hear about it in 2022? Maybe.
Kevin is pointing out that Meta is an anagram of team.
Yes, it is.
You can't spell T without a little better.
You got your team in my Meta.
Well, do you remember that when the leaks came out, the team was actually Taos, Taos.
And then Patrick points out it's also an anagram of meat.
Oh boy.
Meat OS.
Meat, MEAT, Meta, team.
Right.
Yep. They all have something
It's
in
the
common.
non-vegan platform, the Meat OS.
Yeah, the other 4-letter words. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so maybe. I don't know. That one I'm thinking maybe for 2022. We'll see how that looks.
Is that a rumor or how solid is that?
So I've seen memos and things that are real about it. It does exist.
Okay.
Yes.
Maybe there's hope yet. Could it be like 10X part 2?
Yeah. Windows is supposedly part of it somehow. Windows Edge, Office is part of it. Outlook, Teams. So yeah, pretty much everything fits in somehow. I don't know that it actually is 10X revisited. I don't think it's like that.
Yeah.
But I don't know what exactly on the Windows side it'll incorporate.
So interesting. So interesting. It's a whole life experience.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
yes, it is.
Whither Android in my how I was supposed to get some Android in my Windows.
Yeah, next year.
Next year. Okay.
Yeah, I threw this at the end just because I feel that it has some relevance to Windows, but we might as well just throw it in now, which is that Google recently published a post to their Chrome OS developer blog about Android app usage, trying to drive developers to tailor their apps for these bigger screen devices, right? Which has been historically been a huge problem on the Google side, something Apple has done better with iOS and iPadOS. And, hopefully they're successful because we're about to get Android apps on Windows. And if they work better on a Chromebook or other tablet or whatever, they will work better on Windows as well. And so it's nothing Microsoft is doing. It's not anything they have a part of. I do think there are certain apps that can run in a little phone-shaped window, and that's fine. If you want to control your Hue light bulbs or something, that's fine. It's like a little dashboard. It's cool. But if you want, like a Kindle app, which we know is already there, and some other apps, you want that kind of tablet experience. You want the big screen experience. So hopefully we'll see some of that in the future on the Android side, because I can't tell you how many times you grab some Android app on a Chromebook and you full screen it, and it's just...
Oh, yeah.
They just,
It's why the Android tablets didn't take off, because they were terrible.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Yeah. So in other words... Don't be in such a hurry.
Yeah.
Well, we can kind of sit back and watch this happen, and hopefully it happens.
Yeah.
But
all right, Mary Jo Foley, it's time to head. But she's got her head in the clouds, baby. It's time to go up and see what's happening in the cloud.
Yeah, I feel like you can't talk about Microsoft anymore without talking about the cloud, right? Especially the thing formerly known as commercial cloud, which is now called the Microsoft Cloud. So whenever you hear them say Microsoft Cloud, what they mean is the commercial cloud, which is Azure, Windows 365, Office 365, all the SharePoint Online, Exchange Online stuff, and Nuance next year, if it gets approval in the beginning of the year, that will be in the Microsoft Cloud also. The thing to watch from my perspective about the cloud next year is how Microsoft is increasingly blurring the lines between all the different things that are in the Microsoft Cloud. So, this idea of industry clouds, where they have like cloud for healthcare, cloud for retail, cloud for financial services. A lot of people have kind of poo-pooed that and said, yeah, who buys that way? This is the way they're selling now. Right. So they go to a customer now and they say, you know what? You don't just want Azure, or you just don't want Microsoft 365. You want the whole meal deal, right? You want Azure, you want Dynamics, you want Office, you want Power Platform, you want all these layers. And they're just taking your plate and they're putting more and more of the cloud stuff, piling it up until it's a giant whopper.
Until it's a giant antitrust case.
But this is how they're selling now, right? And I think people should be very cognizant of that because it has a lot of implications for how these separate products like Dynamics and Windows and Office are going to be built and engineered going forward. In the old days, they called this Better Together. Remember that old campaign at Microsoft?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
It was basically, yeah, you can use a different word processing program on Windows, but if you use ours, it's going to work better. Right. And this is what they're doing now with the cloud. They're saying, yeah, you know what? You can mix and match clouds, do hybrid cloud, multi-cloud. We have stuff for that. But if you want the best experience, you use all our full stack in the cloud. And that's what we're going to try to sell you. So, yeah, I think people should be very cognizant of that and kind of watch how Microsoft does that going forward. What else?
Well,
in 2022?
We buried the lead. I think the most important thing going forward is how badly is Microsoft going to screw up Notepad?
Yeah, well, that is kind of key, right? Yeah. A lot of people said, that's cool. You wrote an article called What's Next for the Microsoft Cloud, but where's your What's Next for Notepad article, Mary Jo? And, you know, I think we should be encouraged by the new version of Notepad that we just saw for Windows 11. They changed a few things, added dark mode, gave it some rounded corners, did a couple things inside the program, but nothing too crazy, right? And they know, don't mess with something that works and that's good. And I feel like this should be their rule to live by for all the Windows inbox apps as they evolve them. Paint, as Paul has said, Paint didn't go so well, right? Like you had some.
Paint is not quite a crime against humanity, but it's kind of on the edge.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not good. But
yeah, I'm not a big snipping tool fan either. I really like the old snipping tool, and I'm not so into the sketch and snip, as it's called now. But
sketch and sniff.
Yeah, scratch and sniff.
Whatever it's called.
Yeah, whatever it's called. But yeah, I think. The one thing to watch in 2022 is how they update these things that they call inbox apps, because now they can be updated separately from the operating system. It's not dependent on having to wait for Windows to update to get updates to all of these things. It'll come through.
Actually, that's
channels.
another big part of the story for Windows 11 is that the major inbox apps have not been updated, like Mail and Calendar.
Mm-hmm. We didn't put that on the list.
Yeah, it's interesting. Windows 11, like a base install, does not have a mail icon in the taskbar, which Windows 10 did. And I had always argued with Windows 10, these things should be showcases for what's possible on your modern app platform. And I remember someone from Microsoft told me one time, but they are that. That's what they are. And I'm like, no, that's not. They're terrible.
Not really.
They're a cautionary tale.
Yeah.
And they're really undercutting mail today in a way by not putting it on the taskbar. But I think it's because there's that new client coming.
Me too. Right. We forgot to put that on the list. But Monarch, codename Monarch, is the next version of Outlook. That's supposed to be more uniform across all the different flavors of Outlook. Mobile versions of Outlook, Outlook for the web, Outlook inside of Windows. And this thing is very close to launching. Like people in Microsoft are using Monarch. Yeah, they're using it inside.
I can't wait to see this. I'm
fearful.
fearful.
Dying to see this too. But ultimately, the goal with Monarch is to make that mail client replace the Mail and Calendar app that's built into Windows right now, which is good. I think they need to do that. Right.
There's a model that they could use where this app, whatever it's called, will be bundled in Windows 11. And then if you have a Microsoft 365 account, it exposes additional functionality.
Yes. Right. Yeah.
So we'll see.
So that I think will be Monarch's launch is going to be a 2022 thing. I'm pretty sure. So that should be on our list.
Yep.
Project Monarch. I remember I got in to Project Monarch by playing around a little bit.
Yeah, that's right.
And then I'm like, oh, I'm in. And then it's like, you have to request access to use this. And so, of course, I tried, but yeah, I didn't
see.
get
That's why
access.
you need. That's why you need the toxicity. You have to be someone else online so they don't know it's you.
That's right. I need to be an avatar of myself or Sriracha or something.
Right. There's a cat woman trying to get into the program.
Yeah. So that should definitely be on our list. What else? I put on there Chromebook Compete, Windows on ARM. It's just like, yeah, let's see. I don't think we're going to see 10X or something to replace 10X next year.
Right.
I think they're going to push ahead with Windows 11 SE, which they announced very late in the game, which is that stripped down version of Windows 11 for the education market primarily.
And that's it. That is in many ways the Chromebook Compete, I guess. And it does, I think, replace what 10X would have been, or one of the things it would have been.
Same. Yep. Yeah. Did you test drive it? I forget. Windows 11 SE. You can't, right? Because it comes preloaded. It comes preloaded on hardware.
Yep. And I think that's, I mean, look, this thing will leak for sure, but not to my knowledge.
Yeah.
It hasn't yet.
Yeah. And in the short term, we have to mention in March, for people who may have forgotten this, Office is getting some pretty hefty price increases. Office 365, Microsoft 365 for business users, right? That Microsoft calls this the first substantive price increase to Office in like a decade or so. And I get mail about, I don't know if you're getting mail about this all the time, but I am getting a lot of mail about this. Like, how can they do this during the pandemic? This is horrible, especially for smaller businesses. And yeah, they made a decision and they're doing it. It's going to take effect in March. Consumers don't have to worry. No price increase so far for consumers.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, look at all the value. Who can complain?
There is a lot of new value. There is. No, they have added. They have added a lot, not just Teams.
Oh, for sure,
right. But yeah, the price increases. They range from like $2 and up.
I mean, YouTube TV has gone up, has doubled in the last 4 years. I mean, Office.
Yeah.
You know, they've done some squirrely things around making the standalone Office less capable and less portable across machines, and so they've sort of raised the price in some ways, but. Yes, I mean a literal price increase. I guess it's been a while.
Yeah.
Okay.
What about Xbox? Do we not mention the future of Xbox?
I think we kind of did.
Yeah, just real quick.
I guess so. That's my question. When can I buy one?
Yeah, I can't answer that. If you want an S, you can get it right now.
Yeah, I saw that.
And honestly, it's a great little console.
I just want the 4K, man.
I know. I don't remember if it was Pat Gelsinger or someone from Intel basically had come out and said that they didn't expect this to ease up even through the end of next year. So
yeah,
this might be the new normal, as we keep saying about everything these days. It might be a while.
Yeah.
I guess we'll see. I'm curious on the Surface front. Like, I'm curious if Microsoft will do a Duo 3.
Boy, it feels like they're very close. We were having a good conversation about the Duo in the Twit community forums, and the guy really likes it. I mean, there are the obvious software issues, but I'm thinking the Duo 3 is just
there's an awkwardness to it that they're having a trouble getting around. They improve the camera, but it's still on the outside, so you have to open it like a book to take a picture, and it's like, what is it gets into a weird thing. I mean, I think people see this thing and they think, well, I want to use this as a phone, and I like the idea that I open up, it's a bigger palette or a bigger screen, bigger set of screens, whatever. And fair enough. But I mean, and then you talk to Microsoft, and they're like, no, it's not a phone. It's a new type of Microsoft 365 device. It's like, guys, we have to get on the same page on this thing, because it's something. And whether or not it makes sense, whether it can literally replace a phone for most people is, I still kind of know. So. And then there's also the people.
Android 12L helps it at all or not?
Yeah. So 12L is actually related to those things we talked about earlier, where Google is trying to get developers to target the big screen devices, right? And actually tailor their apps to those big screens. And I think that's their attempt to do like an iPad OS type thing, where in the beginning, Apple, it was just iOS on both, but to get on the you can make an iPad specific version. They kind of split it out to its own OS. And I think they really want developers to think about this, because like we talked about, it's kind of a disaster. So yeah, big screen devices, and then dual screen devices of all kinds. Just non-phone, non-traditional slab phone form factors. I think it's important. I mean, it's going to be a lot of these things. So,
yeah,
we'll see. I don't know. I don't know about Duo.
Yeah.
How about conferences next year? Will we have a in-person Ignite or, Build? And
I really don't know. I don't know.
Yep. I would say
they're
Build is really dicey right now.
I don't think they know.
I
don't think anybody knows.
I don't think anybody knows. And Microsoft's erring on the side of caution, which I don't think is a bad strategy.
Yep.
Yeah.
But third-party run conferences, like there have been some.
Oh, they're already happening.
They're happening a lot, right? Like
Richard and
Carl Franklin, right?
I've been to Florida.
Yeah.
I know who else is going.
Yeah.
Stephen Rose was just traveling around the world. Stephen Rose contacted me.
Sorry.
Microsoft 365.
You have fun doing that. You go enjoy your little conference, but I'm not going.
Yeah.
They had a podcast expo.
Sure. Great.
Yeah, great. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think the smart money is saying no conferences. And honestly, I think what Microsoft has done with Build Ignite virtually has been great.
It's pretty good.
I don't think
it's as good as it can be.
It's a huge problem. It's a big problem because I go work for a small company, and my wife and I were talking about this. Like, what if I could go to Seattle in May, for a Build conference or something? My workplace might be like, we kind of survived the pandemic because we weren't paying for all this stuff.
Yeah,
and
it worked all right.
We did okay. So why do we need to do this? Can't you just cover it from home?
There's not a huge.
Aren't they going to put it on the internet?
Yeah, exactly.
And it's fair enough. I mean, I don't know. I hope to have some work travel in the future. I know it is going to be dramatically less. It's never going to be like it was before. Right. It's never coming. Not for me. It's not coming back.
No.
Not to the way it was. It just isn't.
Yeah, I mean, no, there's not a lot of pressure except for a handful of people who really miss getting together with their colleagues. I do miss that actually. That's
same.
one of the things that was.
That's the only thing that's missing. Yeah.
No, I think people who make a career out of being professional conference speakers and they exist out there.
Yeah, but who cares?
They're like, let's go, right?
That's not it. To me, it's the human thing, and it's not just the people who do what we do, but it's the people at the Microsoft that we know or might not know yet, and I think there's something to human interaction that is special and missing when you do it remotely. Yeah. And then just from a personal level, I mean, from a lot of my career, I had little kids. So my wife was kind of home and our kids grew up and they went off to college and now she's like, great, I can travel. I'm like, well, I got bad news for you.
Yeah, we're not going anywhere, baby.
Yeah, we're not going anywhere anymore. So that was kind of bad timing for her because she's been literally waiting for years to be able to kind of tag along.
Oh, I feel bad.
And we could add a couple of days to the trip. And no, she did some of it. Before the pandemic, we did some of it. But it's nice because work's paying for the trip for me and it's less expensive for her to come. And that's just, I don't know.
Well, so it's the Stephanies of the world that are really wanting these things.
The real victims, yeah. Well, she would tell you that.
There's the real pressure coming from spouses.
That's right.
All right. That's it for the past and the future. We have a little present news and then the back of the book. Very little, small amount.
Yeah.
A bit of present news.
We did some of it earlier too. So
I loved the bingo story though. You got to tell that one.
Yeah, this is classic. So this is an interview that with the guy who used to run the Cortana team, and I take exception to some of this stuff. It appeared in the Big Bets newsletter. You can read it for yourself online. So Sandeep Paruchuri, sorry if I butchered that, former program manager at Microsoft, talked about the early days of Cortana, which began as a voice assistant on what became Windows Phone 8.1. And like so many things at Microsoft, this thing raced ahead because it was a small team that didn't have a lot of oversight and didn't have to deal with a lot of the big parts of Microsoft, et cetera, et cetera. And I didn't look this up, but I want to say Windows 8.1 probably came out 2015-ish. It was right around the time where Ballmer was in his last year and Satya Nadella would be coming in soon. And one of the last things he suggested as CEO was that they call this AI, which had been codenamed Cortana, much like Xbox had been codenamed Xbox, right? They name it Bingo, like Bing, you know.
Oh, I thought it was like because he liked dogs.
It's crazy. So
it actually isn't a terrible name, I have to say.
It's not. That's what I felt
like. Hey, Bingo.
Well,
yeah, I think it's not a bad name.
Well, it's Bixby, right? I mean, it's just. Yeah. So they basically, the team waited it out. He moved along. Nadella came in. He had different ideas about the branding. They went ahead with the Cortana bit. But the thing that's interesting to me is he touches on how Windows Phone and Cortana failed, and he kind of points the finger in an interesting direction. This is the part I don't 100% agree with. Basically, what he was saying was that the reason that Cortana worked was that they were the small team and they didn't have to deal with all of Microsoft. But once it became a merging of Windows Phone with Windows and all those technologies had to go across the platform, without regards to whether it made any sense whatsoever to have a voice assistant on a desktop platform or on an Xbox or an Office or whatever, they suddenly had to deal with all these very powerful people at Microsoft running big parts of Microsoft. And it kind of diluted the whole thing and made it hard for them to move forward. And they were never able to scale the product effectively, and especially not the culture that he thinks was important to the product. And that because of this, in his words, the brand faltered before it even had a chance to truly reach the masses. And I'm like, well, yeah, you launched it on Windows Phone. Of course, it never truly released them. It was never going to reach the masses on Windows Phone, dude. But anyway, I do think the key takeaway here is Bingo was almost her name-o, which I think Xbox is a good example of a code name becoming the product name. It's something Microsoft doesn't do a lot, and they often should. And this is another great example of that. For whatever happened to Cortana, however it never took off or whatever you want to blame it on, it's a good brand. It's a good name. I'm glad they kept it. I wish it had done better, but Bingo. Bingo. Oh, I miss Steve Ballmer.
There was a Ballmer, had a dog, and Bingo was his name.
Yep.
Yeah. How much power did he have? Could he have said it's going to be Bingo and they would have done it? Had he still been CEO?
I mean, he probably, I don't know. Ultimately, it comes down to marketing, right? It's, why did Windows NT 5.0 become Windows 2000? That didn't come from the CEO. That was marketing. I think the CEO listens to experts.
They owned the Cortana trademark. It could very well be getting the Bingo
but it was also
trademark.
Cortana was also something very specific in Halo. And I don't remember the timing of the games, but it was probably after this. But, if you follow the Halo storyline, Cortana goes insane and wages war on the Earth. And there's a message in there. One of the things in the Halo storyline is that these AIs degrade over time and you have to decommission them. And that never happened with her, so she went insane and she decided to take over the Earth. And the guys, or the team that made Halo Infinite, decided they were going to not go with that storyline anymore. without ruining how they do it. They kind of retconned that because it was stupid. But anyway, oh
well. Google touts Android app usage on Chrome OS.
Yeah,
you did that.
We
one,
covered this one.
All right.
Yeah.
And then AT&T Ad Marketplace.
Yeah, this is a weird one.
Part of the spinoff, right?
Yeah. So AT&T is about to merge with who are they merging with? Warner? I forget.
Again. Oh, no, that was. It's like these companies are all the same company
confusing.
over and over.
Yeah, they bought them, but they're splitting them up or something.
Yeah. So they wanted to sell off this ad marketplace they have called Xandr, Xandr Inc. And there were rumors in the summer that that Xandr was losing tens of millions of dollars and had been grossly mismanaged by AT&T. That's from Axios. Bloomberg says Microsoft ended up paying $1 billion, but back in July, AT&T was going to sell to the Indian ad tech vendor InMobi. So it sounds like AT&T's been trying to get rid of this for a while. Microsoft is making the case that this is a great fit for what they're doing with their digital ad platform. And right when we're talking about how ads are kind of taking over and Microsoft is doing stuff with Edge and around turning Edge into more of a shopping browser, then we find out they're buying an ad platform. So yeah.
And then even admitting in the press release that we're in a post-cookie world.
Yeah.
So we need some other way to snoop on you.
So we need to still snoop on you, but we don't want to use cookies.
No, we can't use cookies. So what do we do in a post-cookie world?
Yeah. You know, they're playing the advertisers.
That's what we do.
Right. They're playing to the advertisers who want to hear that, right? They're like, okay, we can't use cookies. Now what do we do? So yeah, you know, like we've said on the show a few times, I can't imagine that the senior leadership team at Microsoft isn't sitting there looking at how much money Google makes as the ad company and then comes back and says, why are we not doing this? Like we have an ad platform. We have a search engine. We have an ad platform that monetizes the search engine. Like why aren't we doing this too? Right. A few people pointed out that Microsoft was a bigger player in advertising back over a decade ago with the Quantive. That was one of their biggest acquisitions that they had to sell off in the end.
That was
and kind of take a big loss on that, right?
That was like throw me a bone. Like what did they lose out on DoubleClick, whatever it was?
Yeah, DoubleClick.
And they just felt like they had to buy something. Like they were like, what else is in this market? And it was just, here's this company no one's ever heard of. You know. Yeah. So now, they bought an ad platform, $1 billion reportedly. So that's maybe their last. I can't wait to see their post-cookie ads. It's going to be great.
It's a post-cookie world. Jeez. Well, it's funny that they admit that, but I guess they figure, well, only the ad people are reading.
Well, so people like
what
that.
Google's talking about now, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow. All right. Let's take a time out because you still have more to do. We missed it last week.
We did.
Back of the book. Tips, apps, enterprise picks, code names, and yes, beer with a wild name. Can't wait to hear you pronounce that.
I'm gonna try.
But first, a word from our sponsor. This show, actually, kind of a little coincidence, brought to you by AT&T. AT&T ActiveArmor. Yes. Cooking between meetings, helping with homework. You know, this is the normal life of a human being in the 21st century. Walking the dog. You know, and that's work from home, which is hysterical. When you finally get down to work and focus, you're ready to take that big meeting and the phone rings and it's some robocall trying to sell you an auto warranty. So frustrating. Don't let those fraud calls disrupt your flow. AT&T makes your security a top priority, helping block fraud calls with AT&T ActiveArmor. It's not complicated. AT&T ActiveArmor, 24/7 proactive network security, fraud call blocking, and spam notifications to help stop threats at no extra charge. Compatible devices, service required. Visit att.com/ActiveArmor for details. Back of the book we go. Paul Thurrott kicks it off with his tip of the week.
This is my tip of last week. So, because we didn't do this. I think I mentioned this anyway, but as you probably know, there's a Power On, the story of Xbox. I think it's a 5-part documentary. It's available for free on YouTube and elsewhere. If you haven't seen it, you need to watch it. And I think this was the comment I had made last week. Some people like Mary Jo didn't necessarily care about gaming. If you care about Microsoft at all, still watch it. I'm going to watch it again, and I'm probably going to start that as soon as tonight. It's really, really good. It's very interesting to see kind of the old Microsoft of the late 90s is how it starts. The two different teams that went up against each other. Remember, there was something called Windows CE. They had been part of the Dreamcast. They thought they should be the console. And then there was the DirectX team that thought they should have a DirectX box, which is how they got the name Xbox. And as you probably could figure out from that, they won. And that's good because they had the better product. So it's very, very interesting. A lot of Microsoft culture in there. I think they should have done 6 parts. Frankly, the last episode deals with Xbox One plus Xbox Game Pass and then the new generation of consoles. I feel like those two things should have been their own episode. But it's just fantastic. we talked about this last week. I think this is when I hung up on you guys. The issue with Android and Teams.
Yeah. It's all fixed now, right?
I think it's all fixed, yeah. Yeah. And supposedly that was an Android bug, not a Teams bug, but there's something about Teams that exposed the bug or something. And then for a new tip, if you are a PC gamer, you may recall that when the Epic Game Store launched a few years back, they were giving away a free game, I think, every month. And then they've done this thing over Christmas or over the holidays where they do maybe 12 days of giveaways or whatever. They're doing that right now. So check in it with that store every day and see what the free game is, because there's some interesting stuff coming down the pike. So that is happening as we speak. And then one thing I'm sure I mentioned last week was Microsoft had posted their second set of games for Xbox Game Pass, and probably the final set for the month because it's the holiday month and no one's really going to be around for the rest of the month. One of the games that's in that list is a game that I had as a pick 3 years ago-ish, 4 years ago even. It was a long time ago, called Firewatch. This is one of my favorite indie games of all time. It's available through Xbox Game Pass. This is the type of game where if maybe you don't understand why gaming is such a big thing and you think it's only for geeks or, people that like video games or whatever. This is a game you could play with your family or with your partner or spouse or whatever. It's the type of game that might get people into gaming that might otherwise never have even considered it. It's kind of a mystery story. You're someone who's dumped into the forest and you're supposed to, you go up on one of those Firewatch towers and look out with binoculars to make sure there aren't fires occurring anywhere. The voice actor is one of the guys from Mad Men, and I don't remember the character's name. It's not the main guy, but his voice will be familiar to you probably. It's great. This is a great, great game, and it's available now through Game Pass, which you can get for $1. So there's no excuses anymore, folks.
Are you in a fire tower looking for fires? Is that how this?
Yes, that's it. Yep.
Well,
and what you start doing is communicating with a woman who's in another one of the towers, and then mysteries occur, and you have to go explore.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great game.
I'll have to try it. Nice. And it's co-op play, or how could you play it with?
No, it's not a co-op thing, but it's the type of thing where you could kind of sit
look over your
in
shoulder.
front of the TV and play
what
together.
Should I do?
Because you can discuss, what do you want to do next, or what do you think this clue means, that kind of thing. I think it's the type of thing that will pull in people that aren't traditional gamers.
Good. I'll try it out on Lisa. That sounds fun.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. Mary Jo Foley, pick of the week, enterprise-wise.
Right. This is a true pick for big enterprise companies. So Microsoft a year ago announced this thing called Azure Space. So it's a lot of people joked, are they putting Azure in space? Not exactly, right? Azure Space is a set of technologies that Microsoft is doing mostly around cloud imagery, satellite imagery, geospatial imagery that they're making available through Azure to companies in public and private industry so that they can incorporate that into their business however they need to. They say it's meant for any customer with remote access and bandwidth needs. So this year, right before last week, they announced some enhancements to Azure Space. They have a product called Azure Orbital that lets people communicate and control satellites from Microsoft's and partners' ground stations. So that's an Azure service. They've got a thing they call Space Eye, which is a Microsoft research AI project that does cloud-free optical and multispectral imagery. So if you're an enterprise customer who needs any of these capabilities, Microsoft is making them available either in preview form or in final form through their Azure Space initiative. And given we were just talking about important priorities for Microsoft in 2022, Azure Space, along with quantum technology, the federal government, and what's the fourth one? There's one other one. These are going to be like the 4 key buckets for Microsoft in pushing Azure forward in the coming years. So you're going to hear a lot more about Azure Space in 2022.
Nice. Azure Space. It's a good time to do it. Space. And now the code name pick of the week.
Right. This is a code name I don't think I had ever heard, but Microsoft started talking about it a little more publicly last week. It's Project Florence. And I'm guessing like Florence, Italy. Not
Florence Ion. No. Yeah.
No.
Florence
so Microsoft Research developed this computer vision foundation model. It's codenamed Project Florence. And last year, I didn't realize this, it hit the 1.0 milestone. And so Microsoft is now taking some of the technologies in this vision model and making it available to various Azure customers through Azure Cognitive Services and other means, so that you could do things like image captioning, drawing on their large AI databases, and incorporate alt text more easily into your own applications. So there's a lot of different things you can do with computer vision across a variety of industries, but Florence is more focused on those specific things so far, like the image captioning, like the what did I just say? I'm like starting to draw blanks now. I'm like tuned out. Alt text, right? If you're somebody who's trying to figure out how, as a company, do we start doing alt text in a large scaled up model, you may want to check out what Microsoft's doing with Project Florence through Azure.
That's interesting, huh?
Yeah, I know. I've barely scratched the surface of what Microsoft is doing in computer vision, but they're doing a lot across a lot of different parts of the stack with computer vision.
So you'd have to be using Azure Cognitive Services to try it?
I would think to use Florence, I believe you would.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not like widely available. Anybody can just
I don't think so.
No.
Not yet.
Cool.
Not yet, anyway.
I need a beer.
Okay.
What do you got?
I have got an excellent Belgian strong dark ale for dark winter days. All right, I'm going to try to pronounce this. Brasserie da Chouf. Nice Chouf.
I think that's right.
I've had a lot of these beers.
I was going to say, if you've seen this little troll guy on a beer, you have had one of these beers. He's like their little mascot, I think.
Yep.
So, yeah, you see this in bottles a lot at the holidays because it's like a 10% Belgian dark, strong beer. Lots of like winter spices that are perfect this time of year. The trick with this beer is it does not taste like a 10% beer. So you're just happily sipping along and suddenly you're like, I just drank a lot of that.
You get up to go to the bathroom and you fall through the table.
Yeah. And then you look like those little elves on the bottle where you're like kind of tipping forward, you know? It's a really, really nice winter beer. It gets a 91 on Beer Advocate. Like if you're looking for like a nice Belgian style beer, but with a winter twist, I would say go for the nice Chouf.
Chouf. Nice.
A lot of Choufs out there. You should look up this brewery.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Brasserie de Chouf.
Yeah.
Cool.
Many delicious beers. Yes.
That's kind of the theme of the show, actually. Many delicious beers, ladies and gentlemen. And a little Windows news to boot.
Yeah, a little Cortana, a little this and that.
What is it between the Richard Campbell and you guys? He's got, brown liquor and you
whiskeys.
It must be there's a lot of heavy drinking going on in the Windows.
I think it's fair to say that most of the people I know are bad influences on me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Peanut butter whiskey. Mm-hmm. I'm going to let you be a bad influence on me this summer when we go to Alaska. I'm going to definitely try that. Paul Thurrott, Thurrott.com. His book, The Field Guide to Windows 10, is at leanpub.com. Field Guide to Windows 11 is in process right now.
It's true. It's
Keep an eye
big
peeled.
Week next week for me to work on that.
All right. Mary Jo Foley, allaboutmicrosoft.com. That's her ZDNet blog. We're going to give you next week off because we've got our best of, which is fun. In fact, a lot of the things we talked about here today are illustrated by the original conversations from this year. That'll be next Wednesday, December 29th. And then we'll be back in studio January 5th for a brand new year and a brand new Windows Weekly. Have a great Christmas, you guys. Happy New Year. And
thank you.
You do anything fun for New Year's Eve?
Yeah. I guess avoid Omicron is my goal.
Paul sounds like he's got something planned. What are you doing?
We always do the fondue thing, and we were so you're going to love this. We're going to go see. We haven't seen this guy in 2 years because of the pandemic, but we're going to go see the Amish Comic on New Year's Eve.
Okay,
I know.
Is he only plays the area? I would guess.
Yes, right. He lives in Emmaus. He is Amish, as
it's
the
a
name
local
suggests.
thing. Okay,
Yep.
I think Amish comedy could be very funny.
He's excellent.
Oh,
he's really good.
Wow, the Amish Comic. All right. Mm-hmm. Perfect thing for a
what about you?
tech,
what are you doing?
tech writer to cover.
Are you going to
nothing?
Get people
Zero,
over?
zip, nada. No.
Oh, wow. Really? Huh.
Yeah. Well, because of Omicron.
Yeah.
We had all sorts of plans.
Yeah.
That's too bad.
We're going to do.
It feels scary to go out.
It feels very scary and not worth it.
No.
We have.
Well, here in Pennsylvania, they've solved the pandemic apparently, so I'm not really that worried.
Good.
Oh, that's good. Nice.
Yeah.
That's what they tell me. I don't know.
Okay. Well, you have fun with your Amish comic there, and Mary Jo, you have fun with your mom. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah,
The whole family gathered together there in Western. Yep. It's not Western Massachusetts; it's Eastern Massachusetts.
More central,
Central.
kind of. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, my grandma lived in Lenox in Western Mass, and I really loved it.
Ah, nice.
Really loved
it. That's like a different state.
It is. You know? It's the woods.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Have a great holiday. We will be back, as I said, with the best of next week, but no live show. And then we'll be live once again January, what did I say, 5th, 5th for a brand new Windows Weekly, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1900 UTC every Wednesday. You can watch us live at live.twit.tv, chat live at irc.twit.tv, or in our Discord if you're a member of Club Twit. $7 a month gets you ad-free versions of all the shows, access to the Discord, the Twit Plus feed. I think, Paul, you're going to have to do an Ask Me Anything on our Twit Plus feed. Mary Jo's already done that. I think it's your turn soon, Paul. Lots of good stuff coming up in 2022 for the club. We have, as I mentioned, a couple of corporate members now, which is great, and individuals also welcome, of course. Almost 4,000 of you in this our first year. It's been really a great success. For more information, twit.tv/clubtwit. At the website, of course, everything is available on demand, including this show, twit.tv/WW. After the fact, those on-demand episodes can be downloaded. It takes a couple hours after the show. Directly from the website, or you can go to the YouTube channel, or you can subscribe, which is probably the easiest thing to do in your favorite podcast app. That way you'll get it automatically the minute it's available. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Mary Jo. Have a great week, couple of weeks.
You too.
See you in 2 weeks right here for Windows Weekly. Happy holidays, everybody.
Have you ever read a tech news story and thought to yourself, man, I would love to talk to the person who wrote this to find out more information? Well, that's exactly what Micah Sargent and I, Jason Howell, do each and every week on Tech News Weekly. We read the stories that matter to us, we reach out to the people making a break in the tech news, and we invite them on to tell their story. And you can find it at twit.tv. Look for Tech News Weekly every Thursday.